in tandem with the awakening and the non-duality, I've had hundreds of out-of-body experiences and um, experiences of transference of consciousness into other forms of consciousness. And it never occurred to me as a human that experience would be structured completely differently for
Mm.
non-humans. That just never occurred to me. The way that you and I can like pick up this glass and like look at it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's forms of sentience, there's deities that can look at time like that.
Mm.
So they're just, and because these things are so outside the human consciousness operating system, they're very difficult to describe. I mean, if I could transmit it to you via thought, like send you a thought bundle of
Mm-hmm.
it, it would be easy to get, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, how can you describe popping in and out of time?
Yeah.
That doesn't even make sense for most people.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like the way this continues to unfold, what's really weird is like the whole the phrase, Zen mind, beginner's mind, all that is accurate because like also because everything is so boundless, if I'm with somebody and they're having an awakening, I'm also having that awakening with them. Like there's not something going, oh, I already been through that. I know what that it's not like that at all. I
Right.
experience the environment as just the environment, with no one in it necessarily, but it's just how it's appearing. So it's a wild ride. And it does, and there is just this ongoing in the relative, there's this ongoing aspect to things that they do get more and more subtle. And you can almost see this like kind of refinement of insight, and there's no point to it, there's no meaning or purpose to it if I'm really honest. But if you could say there's something that could matter about it, would be that it can kind of transmit itself somehow. It somehow has an effect on those who are open to it themselves or want to wake up. And so there's something about that. But but at the same time, the clarity that everything we're talking about in the relative that's bound by our experience of time, that is as much as that is also kind of refining, and it does seem to clarify, and there are certain kinds of new insights and so forth. The 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 truth of the absolute, let's say, now we're speaking in two truths, but the truth of the absolute doesn't change. It is changeless, formless, and it's not even formless. Like it doesn't even have a confirmation we could call formlessness. And those are the same. Like interpenetration of a relative and absolute is like so fascinating and juicy. And crazy. It's a crazy ride. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah. What's kind of the you know, you've been through this process for, a very long time. What is awakening like for you now compared to, for example, when you experienced the collapse of duality, or when a major big shift happened? Because I've noticed that there's all this after awakening stuff that isn't talked about nearly as much, like the experience of omnipresence, or infinity, or multiple reality systems, or multiple consciousnesses simultaneously. What's this kind of stuff that like you don't like to talk about because it's too out there?
Okay. Okay. Well, some of it is exactly what you described so sometimes I'll say, when you have access to infinite consciousness, you have access to a whole lot, and it's not bound by the human experience of consciousness. So
Right.
there are conformations of consciousness and experiences that are of the realm of experience, but they're so beyond or altered from what we would consider normal human consciousness that there's no words for them. And they happen a lot, actually. They happen during meditation, probably more likely. They also just happen during waking conversation sometimes. It's really fucking weird. And even cessation, like absolute nothingness, obliteration of time, will happen for hours at a time. Like there's just nothing there. It's so wild. So that stuff will happen. There is also this aspect. It's kind of like everything's in layers, maybe I could say. It's so hard to talk about this, but there is a sort of layer that I might just call the fabric of reality. It's like an energetic layer. And it is that sort of non-dual experience of, that's there, I'm here, but there's actually no there and here. There's as much of me there as there is a there here. And thus the words are meaningless now. And yet there is the forms that we can interpret as objects or as whatever, they're kind of interconnected in this like energetic way. So it's like this nexus of energy, sort
Mm.
of, but it's not in space or time. So that makes it hard to talk about. But that is also here all the time. There's also, and sometimes it's much more prominent, and fun in a way. There's also this ability to continue to train consciousness to be extremely equanimous, no matter what's happening. And there's a phrase I really liked. Someone quoted Sakita. I don't even know what the book was called, but he called it the mellow maturity of consciousness in deep realization. And there's something about that because it just in the relative plane, it brings with it this deep equanimity that has an effect on people. It's a compassion. It's just an enjoyment of like normal human connection and simple things like that, affection and care and nurturing, like around people and animals and all of it. And that's a really enjoyable human aspect as well. And at the same time of everything I'm saying, it's all kind of layered together. Is it does feel like the deck is being shuffled all the time. It's like everything I'm saying right now is just appearing now, and it's just going to be not even a thing. Like it's just gone, and then something else
Gracious.
replaces it. So it's like an infinite Rubik's cube of reality recombining itself, just doing whatever it can do just to make up anything because it can. It has that sort of quality to it as well. Um, and there's always like I tell people this, and I really try to attuned to it myself, and that is never underestimate the power of delusion. Never underestimate the forces of delusion, because there's this sort of delusive like pain body in human consciousness it's ancient. It's been around a long time. It knows how to
Right.
manipulate minds. It knows how to manipulate groups of people to act in massive violence. Like that's there and it's real, in a way, in a certain way, and just always being honest and vulnerable enough with myself as a physical human in some level, of course, to keep looking where am I fooling myself? Where in the human spectrum of things, you don't want to overlook that stuff or bypass it because you can get really weird. When you have a significant degree of realization, but you're not really addressing the human plane, and if there's significant trauma left or anything like that, you can get really weird. And abusive and things, and these things happen. So just
Yep.
a kind of vigilance about being honest with what's going on inside myself, staying in that human space and not like trying to transcend into some sort of spiritual formlessness or something, instead of just dealing with what needs to be dealt with in the moment in a very human way. So those are some components of what comes up. But if you ask me again tomorrow, I could have a completely different answer, to be honest.
What's profound about at least the what I noticed comparing the I am everything to post that is that when there's still this sense of consciousness as this background, there's still it's weird. It's like there's unity, but then there's also this kind of like you're able to not suffer if you don't want to, because you just subsume into the background and you become aware, but you become aware actually as a buffer
Mhm.
to the pain. You recede into the witness, right?
Yeah.
In the deeper phases for me, because the background is not there, the afflictions are not avoidable at
That's
all.
right. That's right.
Like they
Yeah.
are 100% in your face and awake.
And in
Right?
everyone else's face too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the difference. Like it comes up and there's just like no avoiding it at all. But it's possible to, if you're aware, really experience the awakeness and the energetic of that given affliction, or of that given emotion, which I think that sensitivity was not really possible when the dualistic split was more established or prominent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah, I agree.
you can really drink fear. I can drink fear
Yes.
for
Yes.
100%. Like
Yes.
I would love to be more nervous, like that is
Yeah.
a thrilling
Mhm.
experience. It just does I
Mhm.
just don't get it very often.
Yeah. 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 I'm with you there. That's a really important point you make. It's you could say that the tendency to use what I just call disassociation, not dissociation, but disassociation, which is the whole apparatus of just ultimately using the ability to experience an apparent separateness and apparent dualistic experience to avoid, to really avoid. Like, so and you can get into an extreme version of that with sort of unbound consciousness in exactly the way you said. And but the mechanism is important, and as you also said, what collapses next at some point will be that dualistic construct that allows that to happen. So that fundamental ability to disassociate goes away. And you might think, oh, that's great, everything's boundless. It is great at first, and it's great
Right.
most of the time. But when you have a vasana, when you have a heavy vasana that you've been repressing for years and years and years underneath all these identity structures, and it won't go away, and it's like boom, you cannot. It's like another head right here, and you can't get away from it. You can't look away from it, and it's not. You can't snap your fingers and make it go away. It's conditions based. It's going to take some time to work itself through, and it's going to work you too. And it's tricky. So, I do tell people after no self-realization, that doesn't mean that all the suffering's over in a way. It's like now you just see it for what it is very, very clearly. You can address the roots of suffering directly, and you won't have a choice. But it can be a rough road for some people, especially if there's a lot of trauma, or there's some significant um avoidance of certain insights. Like some people just really don't like the idea of no self for whatever reason.
Right.
There's
Right.
something about it. It's just, they just fight it. And it's like, don't fight that. It's not a good idea, you
Right.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. And some people, yeah. Some people really, they're very, very adverse to that. And then also the no self camp is totally adverse to the self camp,
True.
So
True. No, that's true as well. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that's nice about the way ATR, or at least the way So kind of talks about this stuff, is some people are really skewed toward like the no self or emptiness side of things. And, say you really need to establish that I am sense, even if you don't believe in it or whatever. Like you have to understand what that is. You have the realization itself is important.
right.
And I agree. There's definitely a balancing of that. And actually through a very, very clear insight of I am, or I am everything as you described, yours is a very clear description of it. Um, through that lens is where you usually see the deeper insights, in my opinion, because you are experiencing a certain subject object dissolution in consciousness, but it's in consciousness. Like I kind of say, the reflective apparatus of mind is still trying to reflect that which is not reflectable, but in doing so, it creates a dualistic experience, inherent in dualistic experience, or an inherent view. When that collapses, that's when the real subject object fundamental illusion collapses, which is a much more subtle one, and the realization is much more clear, of course. So it is important, I think, to be able to find that. And I think some people who've had a lot of self-abandonment traumas that led them to self-abandonment can really struggle with this.
I think the ultimate resource on out of body experience is Robert Monroe.
Oh,
So
really?
he wrote a trilogy called in for the first book I think was in the early 70s. It was Journeys Out of Body. He wrote another one called Far Journeys, and then his final book is Ultimate Journey.
Okay.
And I literally put it up there with Dharma because it's actually really this one guy's investigation of consciousness and reality using the OBE state, and it's extremely profound. I really recommend everyone read it. Actually,
Cool. All right. Nice. That's a good recommendation. I haven't heard that before. Is he still around? Probably not.
no, he's the founder of the Monroe Institute, but he passed away, I think, in the early 90s.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Well, any last words for people who've been watching this, who are interested in all this crazy awakening stuff and maybe getting started themselves?
Yeah, I would say as a it's better to be an explorer than a follower. Like I really don't care what Nagarjuna said or what the Buddha said or what whoever said, right? The only thing that matters is what the direct experience of discovery is, because it's never anyone else's thoughts or ideas that can directly liberate you. It's always tied into your own direct experience of that, and that's really what is valuable. If your spirituality is so much more commonplace than it was when I started 14 15 years ago. I mean, it's like everyone meditates, everyone does yoga now. But there's really it's really so valuable to always have a strong grasp of the basics and be established in your practice, and to really integrate the pure mind or the awakening, the presence with everything that you're doing to the best of your ability. One of my teachers was Namkai Norbu, Chogyal Namkai Norbu, and I met him in 2012. And I asked him, I said, Rinpoche, how do you realize the nature of mind? And he just looked at me and he was silent. And he said, how do you feel? And I said, present. And he said, now relax. And I said, that's it. And he just nodded. He just nodded and he's like, that's it. Took 7 years for me to get that, right? From the moment I got that transmission from him to the 7 years later when I was reading Ramana Maharshi, there was 7 years distance between the true reception of that transmission and what he explained to me that day. And of course, in his books, and he said this many times, the only commitment of Dzogchen is to never be distracted. And met a lot of practitioners, and I don't think I've met anyone that can fulfill that commitment, So yeah, the point is, no matter how awakened you may be, or no matter how deep the insight is, there's always further and more profound configurations of mind and experience. And I just find that fascinating and just so beautiful and so magnificent to have ever really come into contact with all this stuff, because I'm sure many people watching this feel the same way that I do. But if you look at your life 20 years ago, there was no sense at all that this is what you would have become and how your life would have turned out. And we're all so lucky that we were born in a place and in a time where Dharma was discoverable and where it was so accessible. Because when you step into this awakening, into this reality, your life is never the same. It's like your whole life before this was just this dream. And now you're dead, you're a dead man. Yeah. But you get to enjoy this afterlife and share this truth and this state with the people that you meet, and it liberates them from suffering. So that's really the value of it all. I think that if this is really just a individual thing, and if it's about you, it's not complete. It has nothing to do with you at all. The Bodhisattva vow is actually a project. That's what it really is.
Yeah. I agree 100%. That last part's very important. I think once after I had these shifts, like I didn't even have a Zen teacher before, and then I had a Zen teacher, and he said, I don't remember what he asked me exactly, but he's like, he kind of like asked me, what is all this about for you? I said, well, it's clear now that there's the value of this realization. There's no more value than the utility it has for others. That's it. However that needs to play out. And that's obvious. Like you said, you're a dead man now, right? Who cares? People want to ask me like a lot of times, like, well, how do you experience this? What's this like for you? And it's like, who cares though? Like, what about you? Let's see what we can do to wake you up. Like what is real for you? What is obstructing for you? And where's the juice in your life? Like, this is your life. You don't know how long it's going to be here. Dig in, man. Let's dig in and see where this goes. And I love how you said, about Nagarjuna and Buddha. Like, there's wonderful pointers out there, all this stuff, but you have to go direct. This is all about directness. And maybe one of the most profound things that really hit me when I started reading, might have been the Three Pillars of Zen, or it might have been Philip Kapleau's other book, but at the very beginning, it was in the dedication, he said, this book is dedicated not to those who wish to seek, but those who wish to find. And that hit
Mhm.
me just right. I was like, oh man, this is my speaking my language, because I was done seeking. I was tired of bullshit. Like I was tired of suffering, and it's like I just want to find something real, man. Something real. Yeah. So
Yeah, whether we have another conversation or if it's just a talk that you and I have back and forth on Messenger, there's this quote by, I think his name is Basui. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correct, but he was a Rinzai practitioner, and he said, after going through these stages of looking at the mind, there's a point of boring into the mind ground. And then he said, like a dead man resurrected, you stand face to face with the Buddhas and patriarchs of the three times, of the past, present, and future. And a lot of people read that and they say that is metaphorical. It is not metaphorical. That is not a metaphorical statement. That is referring to a very specific thing.
yeah,
exactly. Definitely. Yeah. I'm happy to talk with you about that, even just personally. That's a very, very profound realization. So
beautiful. Right on, man. Well, we'll have to chat again sometime for sure, but we'll definitely stay in touch on Messenger. And thanks for your time, man. It's been a blast.
Dude, thanks for bringing me on, man. It was a pleasure, and it was always awesome talking to you. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, you too, man. You take care.